I'm Nick. This is a panel on Freeware Gaming, and really what's going to happen here is I'm going to shotgun a whole bunch of free games at you. Because sometimes in the idea of free-to-play games, some people don't know about it. You think of games, you either think of classic like arcade, like I'm going to go out and play Pac-Man or Galaga, or you think AAA titles like I'm going to sit at home and play Gears of War and Modern Warfare. But there's a lot of games, and everything you see here, if you go to, if you get the notes, which I believe I have, I think I put a link on the website, or I can give links out. Everything you see here, you can go get, play for free, and have fun with it. Starting with some free re-releases. One of the ways in which games become free is if a game gets old enough, companies will say, well, we've made all the money that we can make off of this game, so why don't we just release it to the public? At which point, it goes out. Usually fan communities will take over, they'll make cool content packs, but the point is that something that at one point you would have had to pay for, now you can just go and get and play. So we're going to look at a couple of those. One of the earliest and oldest that I know of is one was called 2097. You know it.
Yeah.
There you go. It was one of the, it was a, I can't see my lecture notes on this. DOS game, it was a fighting game. It was, classic 2D, sort of like Mortal Kombat, except giant robots fighting each other, and you hit people and you knock them into the electrified fence and combos. This game I put on here because for its time it's fun. Obviously now it's very dated, both in graphics and even in gameplay to some extent. But I feel I need to put it in here because one of the, I consider one of the more important games of the era. It gained some popularity, clearly. Somebody here knows it.
Believe me, I've got tons and tons of games at home.
Right. But but this one's here, and it was a commercial game, and then they said, you know what, we've run our time with it. Let's just let it go free to the public. And if anybody has questions or comments, there are going to be a couple of breaks between sections, and I'm not entirely sure how timing is going to work out, so we can save it for those sections.
You said you have a link.
Yeah,
listed all of it.
Yeah, well, every slide has a link.
That light blue on black.
Yeah.
There's a web page you have to say select all to actually see the text.
Which one of these? Those two.
There you go.
Better? Or it can crash. Okay.
That's Skype, not PowerPoint. So.
That's cool. Okay. So if you want to copy that down, go ahead. Again, all of this is up on the internet. You can go read it. I have it on a Google Doc. If you need the link for that, it will. I can make that available to those who ask. Command and Conquer. Command and Conquer was a top-down RTS game. It was another one of the first RTS games. That's right. Also, important use of full-motion video. They would film live actors. And then they would use that for the cutscenes between games. So even though the game looked like this and everything was animated, between these sections, actual actors would come on and go like, we are the bad guys, we're going to mess up your stuff now. So what happened here is there was for the 12th anniversary of Command & Conquer, Westwood, who was the company who originally made it, said, you know what, we've moved on in the series, we've had many sequels, we've had a lot of success. So for our hardcore and our old fans, let's do them a favor. We're going to release 3 of our classic games for free. They released Command & Conquer, which was the original, Red Alert, which was one of the sequels to that, and Tiberium Sum, which came after that. They're all basically the same gameplay, but it's a question of, do you want sort of modern warfare, or for the time at least, do you want the alternate history where you have to go and save Einstein and then take him to defeat the Russian Tesla tanks, or do you want the futuristic bipedal tanks walking around and blowing each other up? But yeah, again, all of these, they just said, here, it's our, they're still selling this in the collector's edition, and that has, bonus features, maybe something's remastered. I didn't look too closely into that. But if you want the games in their intact form from the original, they put it up for free. The games are 2 discs each because of 2 opposing sides. here's all the links for that. If you want me to visit this later, I will. Let's keep moving along because that's a lot anyway. The Iroquois Masters, also known as Star Control 2. The Iroquois, I don't know too much about this game personally. I didn't really play it. What this game was, Iroquois Masters Star Control 2. Star Control was a commercial game. And there were plans to make Star Control 2. This game never actually got finished. There were plans to bring it to a console, but then the project was dropped. But when the project was dropped, one of the developers who was working on it still had all the files. And he said, well, the company's not doing it. This game deserves to be made. And he was like, I'm going to keep working on it. And then other fans came in and said, we'll help. And eventually they finished the project and they were able to release it as the Iroquois Masters. The game is about space exploration. It is about meeting alien races. If you're a fan of, I suppose, Star Trek or any of those, Babylon 5 is also Star Trek, isn't it? Yep.
The first one didn't really have a plot, but the second one really expanded on it. Basically, good guys lost. You got to so basically you got to get the good guys back in shape and win the war.
Okay. Yeah. So exciting story. The people I know who have played it really love this game because it is so in depth and there's a lot of creatures and races and people to meet, weapons to get, ships to get, the planets to explore, goods to find and sell, and a lot of people are really big fans of this. And this one is important because it was basically, to bring this to fruition was a community project. Hi, come on. People said, this game has to be made, and the community came together to make it. And that is a trend that we often see, and we'll be visiting more about later. Action Quake 2. This is one of my favorite games. Here's what happened with this game. Quake 2 was a sequel to Quake, which was the game made by the same people who brought us Doom and Wolfenstein 3D, and that is basically the condensed history of first-person shooters. If it wasn't for games like Quake and Doom, we would not have Halo, we would not have Modern Warfare, we would not have all of the games that all of the kids these days spend all of their time on when they should be. I don't know what kids do when they're not doing that because I also do that. But what happened here is Quake 2 never went free. But what the company, ID, what it did, they took the game and they said, we make this game. All of our levels, all of our content, our story, the game that we made, we're keeping that. We're still going to charge for that. But the engine we built it on, like the core mechanics, the programming, we're going to release that as open source. So that means, again, the community came out and they said, that's awesome, and they were able to build their own games upon it. So similar games, more first-person shooters. Action Quake 2 was a game which, it was a mod for Quake 2. So you used to have Quake 2 in order to play it. When the engine went open source, people said, good, now we can take our community-created mod and just take away all the part that they still want us to pay for, stick it on the engine, and now we have a free game that everybody can go play this. You don't get to play Quake 2, but people were playing this anyway and not the original game. So this you can get, and you can play it. It's hard to find, but it was really popular back in the day. There were actually a number of custom games built on this mod. Each had like little tweaks, like this one had better graphics, this one added a new item, this one had better weapon balance. And the link that we have down here, from my own personal experience, I've looked through a lot of these. Me and my friends have tested, by which I mean played into the late hours, all of the different versions, and we've sort of compiled it into a version that we think is one of the best, one of the most balanced. Also, because we created it, we can give it out. So this one is also one of the most readily available that you can actually find. There's one more, right? No, remix. Any questions? Any comments? Anything? Okay. Remakes. So again, this idea of community-created content about fans coming in, finishing up projects. Fans are very stubborn creatures. Sometimes a game will come out and fans will say, this is great, we love this game. And then the developers will say, well, it isn't what we wanted, or we've gotten feedback and we want to change it a little bit, so we're going to go in and we're going to alter it. And then the fans come back and say, you've changed it. This is garbage. And sometimes what will happen in certain cases of particularly stubborn fans is they'll come back and they'll say, you know what, your game was pretty good until you messed with it, we're going to recreate the original. Or your game was good, but we can't find it anymore, so we're gonna just rebuild it again. Or we're gonna make our own version of it. We're gonna make what you did, but better. And these, I believe, are some examples of that. The Spring Engine. I already talked about Command and Conquer. I don't believe it was around the same time, but another RTS game, so in the same vein, was a game known as Total Annihilation. The same idea, little units, you send them out to fight other guys' little units. But it did have some unique gameplay elements. It had, its own story. It had a different feel to it, even though it controlled basically the same. People really liked this game. And people liked it so much that they said, we want to make our own game. We want to remake this game. We want to give it better graphics. We want to make it more modern, run on better computers. All of this. And then the Total Annihilation people came along and said, you can't do that. We still have this game. And they said, well, fine. We're going to keep all the work that we've done, and we're going to let people build new games onto it. And what we end up with is the Spring Engine. So what people have done with this, the Spring is sort of like the core of RTS. And then a whole bunch of teams have come along and said, well, now we're going to make an RTS, based on on giant robots fighting. We're going to have one that's just spaceships fighting. We're going to have one that takes place inside of a computer. We're going to have one with 100 bazillion units. We're going to have one with only 4 units. And all of these all play thanks to Spring. People no longer had to build it from the ground up. They were just able to say, well, this exists. Let's add it to make the game that we want. I listed 3 here. XTA Spring is a version of Total Annihilation, which changed enough so that the original creators can't complain anymore. It's been rebalanced. It has new maps. Kernel Panic, this is the one that takes place in a very Tron-like setting. It's about bits and bytes fighting each other and trying to drive out viruses. Star Wars Imperial Winter. That is a mod which is based in the Star Wars universe. It has X-Wings, it has Stormtroopers, it has all of the sort of things that the fans of that universe wanted to have in a game. They just went ahead and made it themselves. That is sort of what people can do with this engine. And of course, springrts.com is where they have the engine itself, links to all of the mods. They keep track of it. They work with the community making the mods. So when something does come out, it's something that everybody has contributed to in some way. Everybody wanted to see happen. League of Legends. This game is actually fairly recent. It's one of the more recent games I think I talk about today. So Warcraft 3 happened. Warcraft 3 was a game, another RTS actually, that people played and they thought it was great. Then a couple of,
modders,
a couple of invigorated young individuals came and said, we're going to make our own game type, and where it's going to be different from the main game. Instead of controlling a whole bunch of little guys, you're going to control one little guy, and he's going to run around and you're going to fight with him. And this one, this little mode became almost, or did it? It became more popular than the game it was based on. So much so that people have come out and now they've built from scratch new games that are just this one mode. And of course they're adding, new characters, they're adding new maps, they're adding new balances to gameplay to make it better. There's actually 3 projects, 3 or 4, 5. There's a lot of projects going on that are trying to accomplish this. League of Legends is established and they've been working, and I've been playing a lot of it lately. And it's basically it's I don't really know how to describe the game. It's an RTS for people who can't split their attention. But really, this game is just important because it shows, again, that the modding community came along and they said, you know, something great is happening here, let's build our own. We're going to make it free because we want everybody to come and enjoy it. LeagueofLegends.com if you would like to check that out. Also in this style, Dominion, no, not Dominion, Demigod. That one you have to pay for. Heroes of New Earth is another free one. They're coming out with Dota 2, which is its own game instead of another mod. There are a lot of games all based on this one mode from Warcraft. I don't think people play Warcraft that much anymore. They play all these new ones now. Trackmania. You have probably heard of DDR. If you have not, it is the game where there are 4 arrows on the floor, and there are many, many arrows on the screen, and when the arrows on the screen line up with the ones at the top, you have to push the matching button on the floor. And people believe that it is similar to dancing, even though it is often much more just like stomping. That doesn't make it any less fun. Yeah. So, Trackmania is a clone of DDR. And honestly, it is a straight clone of DDR. They have taken, DDR has had DDR, DDR Konami, Second Mix, Fourth Mix, Disney Edition. They've made so many games of DDR. Trackmania has been created once, and they keep adding all of this different content to it. You can make it feel like any of those other ones. You can add in new songs that were never in the original game. People are making songs and creating the arrow patterns for DDR, and it's extremely faithful. It's sort of the game of choice for DDR clubs in high schools and colleges, and it works with the buttons on the floor if you happen to have one of those pads. They sell them for PlayStation, Xbox. Wii now, I believe, has pads out if you want to play it on there. And as long as you have one you have an adapter that can hook up to your computer, you can use them, and it feels exactly the same. And it's kind of amazing that way. Trackmania.com if you would like to play DDR. Similar vein, Frets on Fire. You have also probably heard of Guitar Hero. This game was not as well received as Trackmania. I'm not entirely sure why. It could just be that there was a lesser community for it. The kind of people who play DDR are actually different from the kind of people who play Guitar Hero, and they, I suppose, are not. I can't say anything that isn't unkind here, so I won't say anything. But basically, somebody was like, well, let's try to make our own version of Guitar Hero. And if you don't have a guitar, you have to pick up your keyboard and use F1 through F5 to play it. And it feels a little awkward, but it does work. People have made their own songs. It comes with an editor if you would like to make your own tracks for songs that you have. It's a bit more wonky. It's not as smooth. The community has actually dried up a little since the last time I checked, which is sad. But it is still out there. It is still there, and open source. So of course the idea is that if you see it, if you would like to help, if you are a coder, if you know people who are coders, and you want to say, we can make this better, we can help this come back, you are free to do so. Anybody is free to do so, and it is encouraged. And again, if you have the actual guitar controller, it will work. So if you would like to play Guitar Hero, play Rock Band. Fretsonfire.sourceforge.net for this game. Trackmania Forever. Why did I put this under remakes? Because of stunts. So, Trackmania Forever is an interesting game. There is this game called Trackmania Nations. Trackmania Nations is a game which has a track editor and 5 different environments and tons of cars and replays and built-in editors and super multiplayer and a huge community. And Trackmania Nations, Trackmania Forever, used to be Nations. Trackmania Forever is the exact same thing, except there's only one kind of car. But the one kind of car still comes with a track editor. You can build pretty much anything you can come up with, all for free. And again, it's sort of encouraged. You can even participate with the full community, even though you're only sharing one part of the experience. They really like it when everybody comes together, whether you're paying or not. If you can't tell what's going on in this picture, and this will give you an idea of this game, it's a racing game where you eventually have to drive on walls in order to succeed. I say up there that it is a spiritual successor to Stunts by Broderbund Software. I don't know if anybody has played that back in the, way back when, but it is a game. There are racing games, there are driving games, there are simulations. This is not one of them. This is a game about loop-de-loops, about jumping, about boosting, about driving on walls, and ultimately about trying to set the best time, the best high score. They do have super multiplayer modes, by which I mean you only see 2 cars here. On an actual public server, you would see 50 cars here. Everybody running on their own time, nobody collides, but it's funny when you're still sitting on the starting line waiting to go, and you see somebody go up and just fly into the distance, and it's like, well, they'll have to try again. And it's free. It's amazingly fun, and it's free. It is available on Steam. This is important. Steam, for those of you who don't know, Steam is a digital-only content delivery and selling service. When you go to steampowered.com, you can download Steam. Once you download Steam, you have access to their store. On their store, they have so many games. It started with the Half-Life series. From there, they also made and picked up games like Counter-Strike and Team Fortress, and for a while, just things that were originally mods of Half-Life. They moved on, and if you look at it today, they are picking up old games. You can find Railroad Tycoon is on there, Empire's games are on there. Big titles, Assassin's Creed, which came out not too long ago. You can find the PC version of that game on there. You can find Fear. You can find Trackmania Forever, as well as Trackmania Nations. Steam, because of its convenience, has become pervasive. There are people who believe that the kind of service Steam offers should be the only service. There are people who will argue, I don't know if I agree with them, people who will argue that digital distribution like Steam is going to make real world stores like GameStop basically go away. I don't think that's really true, but there are some people who might think that.
I'm not really sure it's convenient for consoles either.
Yeah.
Unless they start doing cloud computing or something.
But I mean, Xbox Live, any arcade, digital distribution is coming out. Even the DSi and the 3DS has a download store. Not exactly top level content, but it's there. Clearly this idea is catching on. But that is getting away from Trackmania Forever. It is super fun. It actually works very well even if you have a lower end computer. Trackmania.com in order to get it. I highly suggest it. And that's the end of that section. Any questions? Any comments? Anything else you would like to hear about? Or should I just keep going? Yes.
When you download these games, do you get like a sheet as well with all the directions, what the commands are?
Trackmania is very good about that. They understand that it is a game that you will download. So that means when you start it up, it says, it's like the game is now loading. Here's how you play. You press forward to go, you left and right to turn. They build that in very well. Something like League of Legends will have it has a short tutorial that doesn't give you the full idea of how to excel at the game and how to become a very good player, but it will say you right click to attack somebody, you do this to gain resources, etc. A game like Setmania it's simple enough that you can figure it out. Sometimes you have to look into the options to say what are the controls here. But the important thing about this is, again, since these are all remakes, since they are basically fan-driven, when you go to the website to get them, you get them from the community hub, and that will have everybody saying hey, we're fans. If you're a new fan, this is where you come to find out how to play. And there are sort of fan-created guides to how to play, how to excel, how to create new content for it. So even if it is not available in game, it is readily available from the community, which you will usually find where you get it from.
Do these games work with a game controller or just a keyboard, most of them?
All of these games are keyboard. If you have the 360 wired controller, you can plug that in. If you go outside to the flea market, they have game controllers that are out there. If you want to use them, you can plug them in. Most of them will use them. Some games, like I said, Trackmania and Fred's on Fire, they will work with the game controllers that you want, or whatever one you would like to use. It's entirely possible to play Trackmania with like a gamepad. Something like League of Legends, it would be possible, but just the nature of the game, of the interface, you wouldn't really want to. Like it is designed to have like a mouse to designate commands, and keyboard to have shortcuts like now do this, now do this, now do this. So nothing is stopping you, but where it is natural that you would want to, it is pretty easy. Other games, it will be tricky, but nobody will stop you. Anything else? Okay. Shadow Armada. Love this game. So in Shadow Armada, it is similar to an RTS, except it is turn-based. So that means the game will pause. All of the players involved will set their commands, and then when everybody is ready, about 4 seconds of game time go by, and all of the commands play out. At which point it pauses, and you can set new commands again. It is set in space. You get a small team of ships. As you play, the game will keep track of like how many kills you have made, how much money you have earned over time. You can buy better ships. You can buy power-ups. This game is unfortunately not officially supported by the developer anymore. I don't blame him. The developer was one guy. Pretty much, I expect in his mom's basement. But the game itself is still out there. It's still on his site. When you go get it, you download it, you play it fine. If you would like to play with your friends, the local multiplayer works. The LAN multiplayer works fine. There used to be a server, like a public server, that everyone would connect to. That does not exist anymore because he was hosting it and he couldn't afford it anymore and moved on to new projects.
Is it just straight up tactics, or does it have like like diplomacy and resource collecting, like 4X games?
It's straight up sort of shooting, dodging, weaving.
All right.
Anything that happens in that sense will happen between the players outside of the game.
Okay.
This game is just about the battle.
Okay.
Okay. So if you would like to get this game, there's a link. Again, if anybody would like to see another link later, let me know and we will get back to it. The Battle for West North. You know this game again.
I know a lot of these.
Good. Battle for West North is again, this is another turn-based tactical game. It's about having a finite number of units and taking them and saying, go and do this, and we're going to have turns. And it's almost like a board game in that sense, except each little person here on the field has their own amount of health, has their own attack and damage and health, and the kind of things that having a computer to keep track of a lot of numbers makes possible. Not saying it wouldn't be possible in a board game, but very few people want to put in that much effort. I cut off words. The game, again, this is another open project. Westnorth.org is, I believe that links to actually a SourceForge page, or it started out as one. It comes with a number of single-player missions, has a ton of different races. Each race has their own individual units. They have their own sort of tactics that you would use to play. Each of the stories are sort of like full, like you have a battle, people talk. If you have certain people fight other people, they will talk and something will change. And because it is so community driven, it comes with editors so that you can make your own, and people have made a ton of them, put them up on the website. You can go and download more if you finish what's there. Most people that I know will play it for the multiplayer. It works over LAN, it works over, it works over the internet. You can play a hot seat where everybody takes turns issuing their commands, and then you just go around again as though you were playing a board game. Yeah.
Could I mention the convenience of the add-ons thing? Because I know in the UI, as opposed to other games, which you need for mods, you would need to place some content in folders and whatnot. But for this one, all you really have to do is that right under like single player, multiplayer, all that, there's an add-ons button. You just click that, and it just brings up a bunch of mods for it. So you just have to so you have access to the mods without even having to
like go find them.
Yeah.
Yeah, they do make it very sort of friendly and easy to go get more content. Some of the other games won't do that. So a game like Trackmania also has that built in. They have their own sort of browser where you bring it up and you say, well, do you want to look at new cars? Do you want to look at new tracks? This game comes up, do you want to look at new units? Do you want to look at new campaigns? And it's very friendly in that sense. And so really you will never want for content with this game. As long as you enjoy the gameplay style, there will always be more to sort of satisfy your wants. westnorth.org if you would like to check that out. Dink Smallwood is a game. It is sort of a single-player adventure game, sort of like Diablo or Fallout, if you've ever played one of those games. It's top-down. You're in control of a single character. He walks around the world. He interacts with people. He has to fight monsters. He has to collect items. This game is important mainly because of the writing of the game. It has a very satirical twist to it, and its overall writing style. Everything you do will be funny anyway. Dink Smallwood, as the character's name, is probably a euphemism. I won't guarantee that. You start the game and you might start out like, it turns out you're the hero of destiny, now go fight some stuff. It turns out you're a pig farmer, try farming some pigs, that didn't work out. Well, okay, go fight some monsters, I guess. The game does not take itself seriously, but it does acknowledge that most games of this style do. So it's funny on its own if you just play it, if you're not already a fan of it. But if you are a fan of games like Diablo or any sort of adventure game like this, you will probably gain even more enjoyment out of it. This one is actually a bit older. There was recently an HD remake. I believe you can get this on the iPhone or rather the iPad. You can play it on there if you have one of those. That version does cost money, but iPad app, I don't think it costs more than $5. It probably costs $1 or $2. Don't trust me on those numbers. I'm bad at numbers. But if you play the PC version, you can still go get it and play it absolutely free. Cave Story. Okay. Cave Story, you should play. Just straight up, you should play this game. It is a classic sort of side-scrolling kind of game, much like Mario or Mega Man or any of the games that the generation before me played all the time at home. Master Blaster, man. But this game, again, this game is actually sort of an incredible feat. This was all made by a single man. He did all of the art, all of the story, all of the level, all of the coding, all of the music. And what he has put together is, a multiple hour, extremely story-driven. There's multiple endings. There's multiple characters you meet, branching storylines, secret levels, and overall, a very well-developed world. I like this game because it's a good action game. It's very tight to control. It's fun to play, even if you were to ignore the story. But people will play it just for the story. People will play it because there are characters who you get attached to, and you feel their plight. And you feel bad when the evil doctor comes in and says, "Eat this flower; it will turn you into a monster." And all of these things just come together for a surprisingly powerful experience for what may look like a simple game from images. Again, this game has had HD remakes. People came and said, we can make it look prettier and we'll put it on consoles and we will sell it. The core gameplay, the story is no different. There's been a little translation issue. The original creator was Japanese. But essentially there is no difference. It is just, if you would like to play it on your TV, you have to pay for it and you can get it. It is on the Wii. I believe it is also on the DSi's download store. But if you get the computer version, it is still free. The graphics are amazing. The story is amazing. The music is amazing. And it's really one of the best games I know in the freeware market. And even outside of the freeware market, this is just an incredible game. Cavestory.org, you can find everything about it there. Easy. Similar story. All made by one guy. It is a side scroller. It has a surprisingly in-depth story. It has multiple items and weapons and branching storylines and all this sort of thing. Made by one guy, but not as widely received, I feel. Not any fault of the game itself. The game is not as high action. You have to be more deliberate in your actions. It's sort of, you could make the argument that it is a bit clunky or a bit less, there's a word I'm looking for here.
Slow-paced.
It's slow paced, but it's slow paced because of the way you interact with it, the way that it controls. It forces you to be a bit slower, to be more meticulous about it. But again, it is a game about a young girl who thought she was having, go to work with your father day, and then aliens attack, and now she's like one of 3 remaining humans, and she has to deal with that. It's kind of super amazing, and if you like Cave Story, I would try this. It is, it takes a bit more effort. Cave Story is easier to just get into and be like, oh, okay, this is what games are. But this one is, you have to, have a higher level of skill in order to get into it, in order to enjoy the story and some of the better parts of it. Daniel Raymore was the creator. That is his website where you can get it for free. Also, the soundtrack for this game is also incredible. It's one of my favorite video game soundtracks. Dissent?
No, that was more of an agreement, sorry.
Okay. It was behind me, it's confusing.
Though I'm not a big fan of the plot, go figure.
It's got interesting things to it, because you can either play like a normal, just shoot everybody, but you do get sort of rewarded with new story for playing completely as a pacifist, for not attacking, for finding other ways to deal with situations, which is refreshing in a world of run through these levels and shoot everybody. Massively multiplayer online role-playing game. Before we talk about this, would anybody have any other questions? Because this one is a bit of a sort of scattershot beforehand, or rather, this is even more scattershot than the rest of this have been, because there's so many of them that, and each of them are trying to be so big in their own, but yet they're all sort of kind of the same overall, that you can, I'm going to list about 8, but then I'm only going to really talk about 2 or 3. Yes?
Yeah, you ever check out the IGF, the Independent Game Festival winners?
Yep. Just,
how does that, because they tend to be like, different formats and more experimental than the standard genres. Do any of those, catch your fancy, or do you think that'll be the next big genre in anything that they're exploring? Yeah, I can tell me your reactions.
I have odd views on this point, because I look at it from, what games are free, what games are fun.
Yeah.
They look at it more from what games are experimental, what games are pushing the boundaries. Sometimes, not everyone does that, but sometimes people will do that. And in trying to push the boundaries, they forget to make good games. They might be unique, they might make you think. Passage was a recent indie game that caused a lot of commotion. It was a game where you walk right, and eventually you can't walk right anymore and you die. And that was it. It was basically a one-button game. It was sort of interesting, and then everybody said, hey, that's interesting, let's also play with that idea, and also make games that weren't really that that weren't mechanically interesting, even if they were metaphysically interesting. And now sometimes you can say that the market is flooded with things like that. It's like, well, let's play with an idea and just put it sort of into a game, and we can abstract ideas, and how do we do this? And it's like, you're not really making decent games anymore, even if you're playing with good ideas. Not everybody in the IGF and the indie world do that, but that's sort of the problem. When you say indie is almost a genre on its own, as much as action and RPG.
Have you actually come across anything that actually has interesting gameplay?
Definitely. I mean, that's why I put this whole section as indie games, because these were all created, nobody funded these guys, they were just doing it on their own. They were doing it because, like, I have an idea, I want to work with it, and these are the ones which I think were fun and were done well. And even if they don't, some of them bring up interesting ideas in story and in philosophy, some of them don't. But the point is, these are all fun. It's entirely possible to ones that do and are fun, but more often I think you will find ones that do but aren't fun. The entire indie scene is good to check out. Just be cautious because people will probably want to talk to you more than they will want to play games with you. That's not entirely true though. There's a lot going on in that field. People don't entirely know who they are yet. There's people who are doing good things. There's people who are being louder and not doing as good things. It is a tricky subject. I come at it from here's what's going on there. We're sure is fun. There are many other reasons to go in there. It's sort of you have to go in and sort it out for yourself. I have some links at the end about where I've gotten some of this stuff. One of them is the Indie Games weblog. They keep sort of a ticker of everything going on in the indie world, both fun and interesting and new or what's going on, what have you. That is a great place to check out. It's a resource, and I'll put the link up there. Anything else? Okay, so MMORPGs. There's a bunch of them. The idea behind them, if you've never played one, if you've never played World of Warcraft, if you've never played, I just blanked on a whole bunch of them. If you've never played World of Warcraft, basically the idea is you get an avatar, you get a character, it is a big open world, there are monsters to fight, there are levels to gain, there is loot to gather, you go and the important aspect of it that makes it massively multiplayer is you can have like 200, 300, couple of thousand players in this world at a time, and you can either go by yourself, you can meet up and you can get like 3 or 4 people, bring a few of your real life friends in, you can go and fight together, you can join up with a guild, which is like maybe anywhere from 50 to 300, a couple hundred other players who don't always go together, but they still sort of ally with each other. And the social aspects of these games are extremely common. The ones that I am going to talk about use microtransactions. The idea behind this, the game is free to play. You can download it, you can play it. Some of the items in the game you will buy with real money. So that says, okay, you go in, here's your sword, here's your shield, and it'll also go, and here's this really shiny sword. If you want it, give us $5. And you're like, well, okay, yeah, because it's so shiny. But you never need to pay in order to play it. It's just certain games you will need to pay in order to excel. You will need to pay in order to get some cool things. But to just play the base game, it will always be free, unless they change their mind, and then I will take it off the list. MapleStory. MapleStory has become widely popular. I have seen. This is a free-to-play game. It started on the internet, exists on the internet. But if you read gaming magazines, if you look in stores like Walmart, you will see it appearing in popular places like that. There are ads for it in magazines. You can buy sort of their game currency in a store. You just go and be like, here's my real money. Now I have this card which is worth 200 in-game money or whatever the exchange rate is. This game is so popular, a lot of people get introduced to it like this. It's a sort of a 2D side-scroller like this. You run around, you fight monsters, you get stuff, you pay them money because you want to get more stuff. I would like to think of it as baby's first MMORPG, but it is more in-depth than that. People have put a lot of time into this. I will not say what I think that says about them. MapleStory.nexon.net if you would like to play. It is pretty fun, but I got tired of it quickly. But I'm not a fan of these games, so again, the best way to know what you think is to check it out yourself. Don't listen to me. Mabinogi. This game is one that I do like. It is 3D, full worlds. Instead, this game is not purely about hunting monsters, though. That is a main part of it, but you could play this game entirely in a rural life setting. So that means instead of going out and fighting ogres and dragons, you can stay at home and shear sheep and harvest crops and then take it and then go make bread. And then you take that bread and you give it to all the people who have gone out and been fighting ogres and dragons and such all day. The game likes to focus on that. Like every place in the world has, well, here's where you go if you wanna do, if you would like to craft clothes. Here's where you can go to to make potions, here's where you can go in order to make swords for the people who go out fighting. But you never have to go out fighting, and you can still, there are still ways to excel at the game without fighting, and that's, again, sort of unique, and it is refreshing, and it is a way that many people who like to do different activities can play the same game. Me and my friends played it once. We said, let's not bother fighting anything, let's not do this, let's just run across the world. And we did that, and it was super fun, and it's, you can find a way to play this game that you will probably like, again, if you are a fan of this sort of big world, many people figure out what you want to do in it kind of games. Mabinogi.nexon.net, it is important to note, it is the same company that runs the last game, MapleStory, which means they still have this sort of, pay for bonuses. A lot of their methodologies are the same, but it is a very different gameplay type. And Nexon actually has like 3 or 4 other games that they all run that are all different from each other, and they all have a different sort of hook to them. But it is the same company that runs them all. There are about 2, 3, 4 other sort of big companies that host 5 or 6 games, and all of them, they do mix it up. Between companies and individual games, there is a lot of variation out there. Here are some of that variation. Again, you can see Nexon has those 2 games. Area Games is another company. They do Shin Megami Tensei Online and 12 Sky 2. 12 Sky is a game based on martial arts mythology, again, but in this open, run around and go fight stuff. Worlds. Softnix, they do Gunbound and Wolf Team. Those are, Gunbound is actually sort of like Scorched Earth, which is an artillery, sort of, set direction and power and hope you hit the other guy kind of game. Wolf Team is Counter-Strike with werewolves, which is a good idea. OG Planet and G Potato, they do more games. Guns and Warrock are more games in themselves. Those are more shooting games, but they still have this free-to-play, buy some extra stuff methodologies to them. What else? So yeah, you go to any of these companies, there'll be a bunch of stuff there to check out. There's even more companies out there. There's websites devoted to keeping up on the different companies and their different games and what's going on in those games. There are websites out there to do that, which I do not entirely know about. Resources, I guess I'm pretty much done. Again, so this is pretty much where I go in order to find out about stuff like this. The Indie Games weblog, they are a hub of information in the indie community. They talk about new games, they talk about games that are getting remakes, they will even do things like just talking with developers, and they'll say like, oh, well, this would be a good idea for a game, here's what's wrong with these games. They talk about when an indie game that was free is getting picked up and they're going to charge for it, or is it getting picked up and they're like, this important company saw something good in these guys, and then they'll talk about that. indiegames.com/blog is there. It's a very good resource. Play This Thing. This is a blog run by Greg Kostikian, who is he's been a game designer for 30 years, so odds are he knows what he's talking about. Again, he likes to present games from, again, a philosophical standpoint. Sometimes he'll present a game just because it's interesting, regardless of whether it's good or whether it's fun. But it's like, this game made me consider this, and now I'm thinking of this, and it would be interesting if more games played with this. It doesn't say anything about whether this game's good or not, but you're right, it's interesting in some way. Again, not every game is free. A lot of the games are. Sometimes he talks about board games, sometimes he talks about card games, sometimes he talks about like tabletop role-playing games like Dungeons & Dragons, Legends of the Five Rings, Burning Wheel, games in that vein, all played, tabletop dice, you don't even need computers. That is at playthisthing.com. It's also pretty good, but sometimes he just likes to talk about stuff rather than playing stuff, I feel. The Game Hippo. This is just a game which has free games on it. Like short, couple paragraph reviews saying like, this game is good, it has good controls, it looks funny, a couple of screenshots, and then a download link. And it's just a big library of more free games. It actually disappeared a while ago, and then a fan rebuilt it because another group of fans were trying to rebuild it and were too slow, so he did it even quicker. So they do not have as much as they once did, but they are trying to grow. There's a lot there already, some good stuff there already. Then the Oleetku Studios podcast. That is my podcast. I've looked around, I tried to do some research, and as far as I can tell, we are the only podcast who focuses on games that you can play for free. We don't really talk about it unless you can play it. We always put links to it. We talk about old ones that are good, and we talk about new ones coming out. And we also sort of aggregate all of these things that I and my co-host look at in our daily lives anyway. So any of these places that you would like to visit, to find out more about this, see if there's, what else is in this world, because I've only covered, a little bit, but I've already talked about how many games? I talked about 18 games, give or take. There's a lot more to be had, a lot more old stuff, a lot more new stuff. These are just some of my favorites. These are just the ones that I wanted to share with all of you good people. Now that we're done with the presentation, I'll tell you who I am. I'm an artist. I like to create things. I like to draw things. I like to mod things. I'm a game designer. That's what I go to school for. I'm hoping to get a degree in it at the end of the semester, and actually go on to make more games, to do more things, and to change the community wherever it is. I'm a gamer. I do not just like to talk about games. I like to play games. If I play a game and it's... You have to do something to experience something, because that's what an experience is having done something. So I feel you cannot talk about games if you haven't played games. You can't talk about movies if you haven't watched movies. You cannot talk about creating things unless you have created something, which is why I usually don't talk about the things I haven't done. That's why I come at this not just from the philosophical side, but I come to you and I say, these games are fun, and that's why you should play them. Because in the end, whether you think a game has a duty to try and push boundaries in order to ask questions, to do sort of these things, games should also be fun. If a game isn't fun, that's fine, but probably nobody's going to play them, because playing is inherently fun oftentimes. But there's arguing theories on that, but that's what I believe. I'm a student. That is why I am broke. That is why I like free games, and I have done so much into this subject. And why I have gone on for so long. My website is at oleetkustudios.net. That is where we have the podcast. That's where you can read things I've written, look at comics that I've drawn. My friends are on there. We do music. We make mods for games. We try to make card games. We try to do things like this. Just make things and then display them. This is where we display them. And thank you for showing up here. Any questions or comments?
Thank you.
Is your presentation online someplace? It is. Let's find out where. Control N. It is at docs. I am not on the internet yet. There's a plug over here.
It's not,
It's on TCF.
yeah.
Is it on TCF?
Yeah.
It's on TCF. Where's TCF?
TCF.
There it is.
There it is.
That's the one.
Yeah.
Because I gotta look for it too. I want a copy.
Come on. Come on. You can do it. Wait a minute. I have it up in a second. Yeah, 53 minutes. I just did it.
See that?
If you go to the TCF website, they have, why do you want me to do this? Anyway, if you go to TCF website, tcf-nj.org, they have presentations on there. I have it on there. If you go to my website at Oleetku Studios, I will put a link to it up there on the front page. If you don't think you'll be able to remember how to spell that, ask me. I have business cards with a link on it. I can give you one of those. And I will put those up there tonight when I get back.
And I'll remind you.
Yeah. So that's it. Thank you for coming. I hope you will play something now.
Besides